The Awakening. Captain Zorax Thelverin of the Galactic Alliance exploration vessel Distant Horizon drummed his four fingers against the command console. His species, the Tarkani, were known for their patience, but 3 weeks of scanning this supposedly empty sector had tested even his legendary composure. "Status report," he ordered, his voice a low rumble that carried across the bridge. Science Officer Nima Rel, a slender Solarian with bioluminescent skin patterns that pulsed with her emotions, looked up from her station. "Nothing significant, Captain. Just the usual cosmic background radiation, a few mineral-rich asteroids. And wait." Her patterns flashed bright blue in surprise. "I'm detecting unusual energy fluctuations from the fourth planet in this system." "Define unusual," said Zorax, straightening in his chair. "The readings are inconsistent with natural phenomena," Nima explained. "They appear and disappear at regular intervals, almost as if—" She hesitated. "As if what, Officer Rel?" "As if they're being deliberately masked. But that's impossible. Alliance surveys confirmed this entire sector is uninhabited." Zorax's secondary eyelids blinked slowly. The Galactic Alliance, a coalition of 17 spacefaring species, had spent the last century mapping this quadrant of the galaxy. Every official report indicated this particular star system was empty of intelligent life, valuable only for its mineral resources. "Helm, take us closer." "Tactical, raise shields as a precaution." Zorax turned to his communications officer, a reptilian Drazari. "Transmit standard greeting protocols on all frequencies." "Transmitting, Captain," the officer replied, his scaled fingers dancing across the console. Minutes passed in tense silence as the Distant Horizon approached the fourth planet, a blue-green world that looked remarkably hospitable. "Captain," the tactical officer's voice was sharp with alarm. "Multiple objects decloaking around us." The main viewscreen displayed the suddenly revealed vessels, sleek, elegant crafts that seemed to ripple into existence from empty space. They were unlike any ship Zorax had encountered in his 20 cycles of service. "We're surrounded," the tactical officer reported. "I count 12 vessels, each approximately twice our size, and, sir, their weapon systems make ours look primitive by comparison." Before Zorax could respond, the communications panel chimed. "We're receiving a transmission, Captain. Audio and visual. On screen," Zorax ordered, bracing himself for first contact with an unknown species. The image that appeared shocked everyone on the bridge. The being looked remarkably similar to several Alliance species, bipedal with 2 arms, a single head with forward-facing eyes, and minimal external features. Yet it belonged to no known race. Its skin was a light tan color, with dark hair atop its head, and it wore a simple, elegant uniform of deep blue with silver accents. "Greetings, Captain Thelverin of the Galactic Alliance vessel Distant Horizon," the being said in perfect standard Alliance language. "I am Commander Elena Chen of the Earth Defense Force. You have entered a restricted system. Please state your intentions." Zorax struggled to maintain his diplomatic composure. "How do you know my name? And what is Earth?" "Our records show this system as uninhabited." The being, Commander Chen, smiled slightly. "We know many things about the Alliance, Captain. As for Earth, you're looking at it, the fourth planet of this system and humanity's homeworld. And regarding your records," she paused, "they show what we want them to show." "Impossible," Nima blurted out. "We have been mapping this sector for decades. No civilization could hide an entire planetary system. Yet here we are," Chen replied calmly. "Your sensors detected our presence only because we allowed it. It was time for a formal introduction." Zorax's mind raced. If this species possessed technology advanced enough to fool Alliance sensors, what else were they capable of? And why reveal themselves now? "I propose a meeting, Captain," continued Commander Chen. "A diplomatic exchange to explain the situation. You and 2 officers of your choosing are welcome to visit our orbital station. I assure you, No harm will come to you or your vessel. Zorax considered his options. Alliance protocol for first contact situations was clear. Establish peaceful communication and gather information. But this wasn't a typical first contact. These humans had apparently been watching the Alliance for some time. Very well, Commander. I accept your invitation. 3 hours later, Zorax, along with Nima and his security chief, stepped from the shuttle onto the human orbital station. The structure was both massive and elegant, a series of interconnected rings that rotated gently to create artificial gravity. Through vast, transparent sections, they could see the blue-green planet below. Commander Chen greeted them personally, leading them through corridors filled with other humans going about their business. Zorax noticed immediately how diverse the species was, varying in height, skin color, and build, yet clearly all part of the same race. "Welcome to Celestial Watchtower," Chen said. "One of our older orbital platforms, constructed approximately 700 years ago." 700 years. Nima's bioluminescence flashed in surprise. That predates the formation of the Galactic Alliance itself. Indeed it does, Chen confirmed. Humanity has been spacefaring for considerably longer than that. They entered a spacious conference room, where several other humans waited. At the head of the table stood an older human with dark skin and silver hair, wearing an ornate uniform distinct from the others. "Captain Thelverin. This is Admiral Thomas Okonkwo, Earth Defense Force High Command," Chen introduced. The Admiral stepped forward. "Thank you for accepting our invitation, Captain. I understand you must have many questions." "That would be an understatement, Admiral," Zorax replied. "Starting with why a spacefaring civilization advanced enough to hide from our sensors would choose to remain hidden in the first place." Admiral Okonkwo gestured for them to sit. "A fair question. The simple answer is observation. We've been studying the development of younger spacefaring species for a very long time." A holographic display activated in the center of the table, showing a three-dimensional map of the galaxy. Countless points of light glowed across its spiral arms. "The blue lights represent known Alliance worlds," explained the Admiral. "The green represent human settlements and outposts." Zorax stared in disbelief. The green lights outnumbered the blue by at least 5-1, extending into regions the Alliance had never explored. "This is..." Nima struggled for words. "Unexpected," finished the Admiral with a small smile. "Humanity achieved faster than light travel approximately 3,000 years ago, Captain. By the time the first Alliance species reached the stars, we had already colonized hundreds of worlds." "Impossible," the security chief muttered. "The oldest Alliance species, the Drazari, have records of spaceflight dating back only 900 years. No species could evolve so quickly from planetary bound to multi-system colonization. Unless," Nima interjected, her scientist's mind racing ahead, "they had help. Or," her bioluminescence pulsed in a pattern indicating sudden realization, "unless they found something." Admiral Okonkwo nodded solemnly. "Very perceptive, Science Officer Rel. Early in our expansion, we discovered ruins on Mars, our neighboring planet. Technology far beyond our understanding at the time. It accelerated our development significantly." "The precursors," whispered Zorax. "Every spacefaring species had myths about an ancient race that seeded the galaxy with life before mysteriously vanishing. We called them the Architects," said Chen. "But yes, essentially the same concept. Except they didn't vanish, not entirely." The holographic display shifted, showing images of what appeared to be humans, but with subtle differences: slightly larger craniums, eyes with an unusual iridescence, skin with a faint metallic sheen. "Meet our distant cousins," said Admiral Okonkwo. "What you would call precursors, we call our ancestors. Not biologically. They didn't create us, but they guided our early development. They found Earth when humans were still using stone tools, recognized our potential, and subtly influenced our evolution." Zorax felt his world tilting on its axis. Everything the Alliance believed about galactic history was being rewritten before his eyes. If what you're saying is true, he managed, why reveal yourselves now? Why not continue your observation? Admiral Okonkwo's expression darkened. Because observation is no longer sufficient. The galaxy is changing, Captain Thelverin. Dangers are stirring that will affect us all, humans and Alliance species alike. The holographic display changed again, showing the outer edge of the galaxy. A strange distortion rippled through the stars there, like a wave of darkness consuming light. We call it the Void Cascade, Chen said quietly, a phenomenon our scientists have been tracking for centuries. It's accelerating, and within 50 years, it will reach Alliance space. What exactly is it? Asked Nema, her scientific curiosity overriding her shock. The death of space-time itself, replied the Admiral. And we believe it's not natural. Someone, or something, is causing it. Why tell us? Zorax demanded. If humanity has remained hidden for millennia, possesses technology far beyond ours, and has known about this threat for centuries, why involve the Alliance at all? Admiral Okonkwo stood and walked to a viewport, looking down at Earth. Because despite our head start, Captain, we haven't found a solution. And because isolation was always meant to be temporary. The architects believed in cooperation between species. It was their greatest strength. They left behind fragments of their knowledge across the galaxy, entrusting different pieces to different worlds. You're saying the Alliance has knowledge you don't. Zorax couldn't keep the skepticism from his voice. Precisely, confirmed the Admiral. The Drazeri ruins on Helios Prime, the Solarian crystal libraries, the Tarkani ancestral songs, all contain fragments of architect wisdom that humanity never received. Commander Chen leaned forward. We've reached the limit of what we can accomplish alone, Captain. The time has come for humanity to rejoin the galactic community, not as observers, but as partners. Zorax looked between the human officials, his mind struggling to process everything he'd learned. If they were telling the truth, the implications were staggering. The Alliance Council would need to be informed immediately. I must report this to Alliance High Command, he said finally. Of course, Admiral Okonkwo nodded. We anticipated this. A diplomatic vessel is prepared to accompany you back to Alliance space. Ambassador Rise will represent Earth in formal discussions. And the Void Cascade? Asked Naima. You said we have 50 years. 47, to be precise, corrected Chen. But the effects will begin to be felt much sooner. Spatial distortions, temporal anomalies, system-wide electronic failures, all precursors to the main event. Zorax stood, having made his decision. I will convey the urgency of the situation to the Council. If what you've shown us is accurate, we have much to discuss, and little time to waste. As they prepared to return to their ship, Zorax paused. One last question, Admiral. You said the architects guided human development. What happened to them? A shadow passed over the Admiral's face. They ascended, Captain, evolved beyond physical form. But not before warning us about the cycles of creation and destruction that have swept through this galaxy for millions of years. The Void Cascade is just the latest manifestation of a very old conflict. He hesitated, then added, and humanity has been preparing for it since our beginning. Back aboard the distant horizon, as they broke orbit and set course for Alliance space, with the human diplomatic vessel alongside them. Zorax stood at the viewport in his quarters, watching the blue-green world recede. Captain's log, he dictated quietly. Today marks what may be the most significant first contact in Alliance history. Though perhaps first contact is a misnomer. We haven't discovered a new species. Rather, we've been discovered by perhaps the oldest living civilization in known space. And they bring with them both extraordinary knowledge and warnings of extraordinary danger. He paused, considering his next words carefully. The Alliance was founded on the principle that diverse species achieving spaceflight at roughly the same time could benefit from mutual cooperation and shared growth. Now we must confront a new reality. We are not the first, not by millennia. And our supposed empty frontier has been anything but empty. The question now is not how we respond to this revelation, but whether we can adapt quickly enough to face what comes next. The Hidden Guardians. The Alliance Council chamber on Harmonious Prime fell into stunned silence as the holographic presentation concluded. The representatives of 17 spacefaring civilizations sat motionless, trying to process what they had just witnessed. Captain Zorax had delivered his report alongside Ambassador Elena Reyes of Earth, and the evidence was irrefutable. Humanity was not merely older than the Alliance, it was ancient by comparison. "This is difficult to accept," said High Counselor Trazoma of the Drazeri, his scaled skin shifting through colors that indicated deep disturbance. "Our entire understanding of galactic history is incomplete," finished Ambassador Reyes gently. As was intended, humanity made a conscious choice to remain hidden, to allow younger species to develop naturally, without the overwhelming influence of an elder race. "You mean without our worship," countered Counselor Vesh of the Solarians, her bioluminescent patterns flashing with indignation. "Early civilizations encountering vastly superior technology invariably create religions around it." Ambassador Reyes inclined her head. That was indeed one concern. But more importantly, we observe that species who develop independently tend to innovate in ways that those under guidance do not. Your alliance has created technologies and cultural paradigms that humanity, for all our head start, never conceived. First Minister Krill, a massive methane breather whose environmental suit barely contained his bulbous form, leaned forward. "This void cascade you speak of, you expect us to believe that a species with your technological advancement cannot address this threat alone. The architects, what you call precursors, left their knowledge deliberately fragmented," explained Rice. "No single species was entrusted with the complete picture. They believed diversity of thought was the strongest defense against extinction." Science Minister Peltora, a diminutive avian with iridescent feathers, chirped softly before speaking. "The evidence regarding the void cascade is compelling. Our own deep space observatories have detected anomalies at the galaxy's edge, though we lacked the context to understand them. Time is of the essence," said Captain Zorax, who had remained silent until now. "If the humans' calculations are correct, we have less than 5 decades before the cascade reaches populated systems." "And what exactly do you propose?" asked High Counselor Trazoma. Ambassador Reyes activated a new hologram, a complex, multi-layered schematic of what appeared to be a massive device. "This is the Nexus Array. Based on partial architect schematics in humanity's possession, it's designed to stabilize space-time against the cascade. But our understanding is incomplete. We believe the missing elements are contained within knowledge preserved by Alliance species." The council chamber erupted in a cacophony of voices, questions, and exclamations in multiple languages. High Counselor Trazoma raised all 4 of his arms for silence. "Even if what you say is true, Ambassador, why should we trust humanity? You've admitted to millennia of deception. For all we know, this void cascade could be a fabrication to gain access to our knowledge." A new voice cut through the tension, deep, resonant, and undeniably non-human. "They speak the truth, Counselor." All eyes turned to the entrance of the chamber where a tall, slender figure stood. It had a vaguely humanoid shape, but its skin had a metallic sheen that caught the light, and its eyes glowed with an inner luminescence that seemed to shift between colors. Ambassador Reyes bowed slightly. "Emissary Talus, your presence honors us." The being glided forward with unnatural grace. "I am Talus, one of the few architects who chose to remain in physical form. I serve as observer and guide to our human prodigies." The chamber fell into absolute silence. Not even breathing could be heard. For spacefaring civilizations raised on legends of the precursors, this moment was equivalent to a deity stepping into reality. "Impossible," whispered First Minister Krill. "I assure you, "I am quite real," said Talus, with what might have been amusement in its melodious voice. "Though most of my kind chose to ascend beyond material existence eons ago, some of us remain to guide the younger races. Humanity was the first to reach a level of development that allowed direct communication." "If you are truly an architect," said Science Minister Peltora, recovering her composure, "then why has your kind allowed this void cascade to threaten us all?" Talus's expression grew solemn. "The cascade is not a natural phenomenon, Minister. It is a weapon, deployed by what you might call our opposite, where the architects seeded life and knowledge throughout the cosmos. The void harbingers seek to return all to primordial entropy." The hologram in the center of the chamber shifted, showing what appeared to be a massive, shapeless darkness moving between galaxies. "This conflict has raged since before your sun ignited," continued Talus. "Cycles of creation and destruction, playing out across billions of years. The architects chose to transcend physical form, but in doing so, limited their ability to directly intervene. Humanity became our embodied will, our hands in the material universe. And now you need our help as well," said High Counselor Trazoma, his voice steady despite the revelation. "Yes," admitted Talus simply. "The Nexus Array requires knowledge fragments distributed among all sapient races within this galactic sector. It cannot be completed otherwise." Ambassador Reyes stepped forward again. "We propose an immediate knowledge-sharing initiative, followed by a joint construction effort for the array. Humanity will provide the technological framework and resources, but we need Alliance expertise for key components." "And if we refuse?" asked Counselor Vesh. Ambassador Reyes met her gaze steadily. "Then humanity will do what we can alone, but the array will be incomplete. Billions of lives across thousands of worlds will be lost." Captain Zorax, who had been watching the proceedings carefully, noted the subtle shift in the Council's mood. The initial shock and disbelief had given way to a grim acceptance. "I have a proposal," he said, drawing all attention. "A verification mission. Let representatives from each Alliance species visit Earth, examine the human evidence directly, and search their own archives for the supposed architect fragments. If corroboration is found, we proceed with the knowledge-sharing initiative." High Counselor Trazoma nodded slowly. "A prudent suggestion, Captain. Ambassador Reyes, would Earth agree to such an arrangement?" "We would welcome it," she replied without hesitation. "Our orbital academies stand ready to receive your delegations." "Then it is decided," declared the High Counselor. "This council stands in recess while we organize the verification teams. We reconvene once their findings are presented." As the council members filed out, Captain Zorax approached Ambassador Reyes and the architect Talus. "That went better than expected," he observed. "The presence of an actual architect helps," admitted Reyes with a small smile. "Though we had hoped to avoid revealing Talus quite so soon." The architect's luminous eyes studied Zorax. "You have questions, Captain. I sensed them rippling through your thought patterns." Zorax nodded, choosing his words carefully. "If humanity has been your hands for thousands of years, what does that make the Alliance? Why bring us into this conflict now?" Talus made a gesture that might have been the equivalent of a smile. "A valid inquiry. Humanity was our first success, but never intended to be our only one. Different species perceive reality through different lenses, Captain. The Alliance contributes perspectives and approaches that humanity, for all their advancement, cannot." "Unity in diversity," murmured Ambassador Reyes. "The Architect Prime Directive." "Indeed," confirmed Talus. "No single species, no matter how advanced, can stand alone against the void. The coming storm will require all sentient life working in concert." 6 months later, the verification teams returned to Harmonious Prime with their findings. The evidence was conclusive. Each Alliance species did indeed possess fragments of architect knowledge, preserved in various forms: the crystalline memory cores of the Solarians, the genetic songs encoded in Tarkani DNA, mathematical constants embedded in Drazeri architecture. More startling was the discovery that many Alliance worlds bore signs of subtle human observation posts, some dating back centuries. The revelation might have caused outrage, except for what those observation posts contained: defensive systems designed to protect developing civilizations from external threats, medical repositories for emergency intervention, and historical records documenting humanity's non-interference policy. The Alliance Council reconvened with a new sense of purpose. The knowledge-sharing initiative was approved unanimously, and construction of the first Nexus array began in neutral space at the edge of Alliance territory. Captain Zorax, having played a crucial role in the verification missions, was appointed Alliance liaison to the Nexus project. On the observation deck of the massive construction station, he stood beside Commander Elena Chen, watching the colossal structure take shape. "Does it ever bother you?" he asked. "Knowing your species has been shaped from the beginning for this purpose, to be guardians against a threat most humans never even knew existed." Chen considered the question. "Sometimes, but then I remember what Talus told us about choice. The architects could guide, but they couldn't control. At every critical juncture in our history, humanity chose to continue the path of protection. We could have rejected our role, turned inward, used our technology for conquest. Some would say observation is a form of control," noted Zorax. "Perhaps," Chen acknowledged. "But consider the alternative. Early in our spacefaring era, we encountered primitive civilizations and revealed ourselves. The results were disastrous: wars, religious upheaval, civilizational collapse. We learned that protection sometimes requires distance." Zorax watched as enormous components were maneuvered into place by ships bearing both human and Alliance markings. "And now, no more distance. Now we need each other," she said simply. "The Void Cascade doesn't discriminate between observer and observed. Either all sentient life stands together, or all falls together." A communications officer approached them. "Commander Chen, Captain Thelverin. They're ready for you in the integration chamber." They walked together through the massive station, passing teams of human and Alliance engineers working side by side. Despite the lingering tensions and occasional cultural misunderstandings, the project was proceeding ahead of schedule. The integration chamber was a vast spherical room at the heart of the station. At its center hovered a complex crystalline structure, the core of the Nexus array, where all the knowledge fragments would ultimately merge. Talus stood before the core, along with the leading scientists from 17 species. The architect's form seemed to shimmer slightly, as if struggling to maintain cohesion in physical space. "The integration protocols are ready," announced Dr. Sora Miyamoto, the human project director. "Each species' knowledge fragment has been verified and prepared for synthesis." "Proceed," said Talus, its voice sounding strained. "Time grows short. The Harbingers have sensed our efforts." The scientists began the integration process, each approaching the core to insert their civilization's contribution. As each fragment merged with the whole, the crystalline structure grew more complex, emitting pulses of light in patterns that seemed to defy normal physics. "What happens when it's complete?" Zorax asked quietly. "If our theories are correct," replied Chen, "it will generate a counter-resonance field that stabilizes space-time against the cascade's effects. Essentially, it reinforces the fabric of reality." "And if your theories are incorrect?" Chen gave him a wry smile. "Then we've brought together the greatest scientific minds in the galaxy to witness our failure firsthand." As the final fragment, the Drazeri contribution, was integrated, the core pulsed with blinding intensity. For a moment, everyone in the chamber experienced a sensation of expanded awareness, as if their consciousness had briefly touched something vast and ancient. Then the light stabilized, and the core began to emit a steady, subtle resonance that seemed to penetrate to the molecular level. "Integration successful," announced Dr. Miyamoto, checking her instruments. "Field generation at optimal parameters. The prototype is functioning exactly as predicted." A cheer went up from the assembled scientists and engineers. the first true moment of unified celebration between humans and the Alliance species. Talus approached Zorax and Chen, its form now more stable. "This is only the beginning," the architect cautioned. "The prototype proves the concept, but we will need hundreds of arrays positioned throughout the galaxy to fully counter the cascade." "We'll build them," said Chen with quiet determination. "Together," added Zorax. As they left the integration chamber, Zorax found himself reflecting on the strange path that had led them all here. 6 months ago, he had been an ordinary Alliance captain on a routine exploration mission. Now he stood at the center of what might be the most important collaboration in galactic history. "You know," he said to Chen as they returned to the observation deck, "in Tarkani mythology, there's a story about the Sky Guardians, ancient beings who watched over the world from above, intervening only when truly needed. I always thought it was just a primitive attempt to explain natural phenomena." "And now?" asked Chen. Zorax gazed out at the stars, seeing them with new eyes. "Now I wonder how many of our myths contain fragments of truth we've forgotten. How many stories of gods and guardians began with actual encounters, with your people or with the architects themselves?" Chen smiled. "The line between advanced technology and magic is often indistinguishable. But there's a key difference between humanity and gods, Captain." "What's that?" "We make mistakes. We learn. We evolve." She gestured toward the partially constructed array. "This isn't the work of infallible beings. It's the result of countless failures, adjustments, and second chances. That's the true legacy the architects left us, not perfection, but the endless striving toward it." As if to emphasize her point, alarms suddenly blared throughout the station. "Spatial distortion detected," came the announcement over the communication system. "Void Cascade precursor event in progress, bearing 227 Mark 43. All personnel to emergency stations." Chen and Zorax exchanged glances. The threat was no longer theoretical, it had arrived. "It seems," said Zorax grimly, "that our time for preparation has been cut short." "Then we adapt," replied Chen, already moving toward the command center. "That's what Guardians do." Together, they hurried to face the first test of their newfound alliance, representatives of the galaxy's youngest coalition, and its oldest power, united against a darkness older than stars. The first wave. The command center of Nexus Station Alpha pulsed with activity as holographic displays showed the approaching distortion. It resembled a rippling darkness against the starfield, like ink spreading through water, the leading edge of what humans called a void cascade event. "Time to intercept." Commander Chen's voice remained steady despite the tension filling the room. 17 minutes, replied the Solarian sensor officer, her bioluminescence dimmed to conserve energy. A stress response in her species. Captain Zorax studied the tactical display, where Alliance and human vessels were forming a defensive perimeter around the station. "The array isn't fully operational yet. Can we evacuate?" Dr. Miyamoto shook her head. "The integration core can't be moved without destabilizing the entire matrix. We either defend it here or lose it entirely." Talus, the architect, stood silently observing the approaching darkness. Its metallic skin had dulled, and its movements seemed labored. "This is not a random event," it finally said. "The Harbingers have sensed our project. They seek to destroy it before completion." "You mean this is a targeted attack?" Zorax's secondary eyelids blinked rapidly in alarm. "Yes," confirmed Talus. "The void cascade you've detected in distant space is their main advance. Slow, inexorable. This is merely a scout, a tendril sent ahead to eliminate resistance." Admiral Thomas Okonkwo, who had arrived from Earth when the prototype was completed, stepped forward. His weathered face showed no fear, only determination. "Then we make our stand here. The array may not be complete, but it's functional. Can it be used defensively?" Dr. Miyamoto exchanged glances with her Alliance counterparts. Theoretically, the resonance field was designed to stabilize space-time against cascade effects. If we invert the phase and focus it directionally, it would create a repulsive effect, finished Drezkor, the Drazari physicist, like polarized magnets. Do it, ordered Admiral Okonkwo. As the scientists rushed to reconfigure the array, Zorax approached Chen. Your people have faced these entities before, haven't you? That's why humans were chosen by the architects. Chen hesitated before answering. Not exactly. The architects chose several species over the millennia. We're simply the only ones who survived. The implications of her statement hung heavy in the air. Before Zorax could ask more questions, the tactical officer called out. Multiple spatial fractures forming. The distortion is accelerating. The main view screen showed the darkness splitting into tendrils that probed toward the station like seeking fingers. Where they touched, space itself seemed to warp and dissolve. Array reconfiguration at 60%, reported Dr. Miyamoto. We need 5 more minutes. We don't have 5 minutes, said Admiral Okonkwo grimly. He opened a channel to the defensive fleet. All vessels, engage Intercept Protocol Delta. Target those tendrils and fire at will. Human and Alliance ships surged forward, weapons blazing against the approaching darkness. Energy beams and exotic particle weapons struck the tendrils, causing them to temporarily recoil, but each attack seemed to grow progressively less effective, as if the entity were adapting. It's learning, observed Talus. The Harbingers always adapt quickly. A tendril lashed out with stunning speed, enveloping an Alliance cruiser. The ship didn't explode. It simply ceased to exist, its matter seemingly erased from reality itself. By the first star, whispered Zorax in horror. 80% reconfiguration, called out Dr. Miyamoto, her voice tight with stress. 3 more minutes. Another ship vanished, then another. The defensive perimeter was collapsing as vessels retreated from the unnatural threat. Admiral Okonkwo studied the tactical display, his expression hardening. We need to buy time. He turned to his communications officer. Signal the Prometheus. Execute Protocol Omega. Chen's head snapped up. Admiral, the Prometheus is still experimental. We don't know if the temporal shield will hold against this kind of attack. We're out of options, Commander. The Admiral's voice was resolute. Captain Rice understands the stakes. On the view screen, a massive human vessel moved forward from the rear of the formation. Unlike the sleek designs of other human ships, the Prometheus was bulky, its hull studded with unusual projectors and coils. What is that ship? Asked Zorax. Our newest defense prototype, replied Chen quietly. A vessel equipped with a temporal dislocation field. It exists partially outside normal spacetime, making it theoretically resistant to void effects. Theoretically, we've never tested it against an actual void entity. The Prometheus accelerated directly toward the main mass of darkness. As it approached, a shimmering field expanded around it, creating a bubble of distorted space. When the tendrils struck this field, they seemed to slide around it, unable to penetrate. It's working, exclaimed one of the tactical officers. For now, cautioned Chen. But the field requires enormous energy. They can't maintain it for long. The Prometheus pushed deeper into the darkness, drawing the entity's attention away from the station. More tendrils converged on the ship, probing for weaknesses in its defense. Array reconfiguration complete, announced Dr. Miyamoto. Initiating resonance field now. The station hummed with power as the Nexus array activated. A wave of blue-white energy expanded outward, creating a visible ripple in spacetime. When it reached the darkness, the effect was immediate and dramatic. The tendrils recoiled as if in pain, the darkness contracting away from the energy field. It's working, breathed Zorax. The array is repelling it. But their victory was short-lived. The darkness regrouped, changing tactics. Instead of trying to engulf the station, it began to concentrate its attack on the Prometheus, which was now surrounded. The entity is focusing all its energy on the temporal field, reported the sensor officer. Field integrity failing. "Get them out of there," ordered Admiral Okonkwo. "Tell them to withdraw immediately." "They can't," said Chen, her voice hollow. "The engines had to be taken offline to power the temporal field. They knew it was a one-way mission." Zorax watched in horrified fascination as the Prometheus fought its losing battle. The temporal field flickered, contracted, and finally collapsed. But instead of immediately consuming the ship, something unexpected happened. The darkness seemed to hesitate, as if confused. "What's happening?" demanded Admiral Okonkwo. "They've initiated a temporal cascade," said Chen, understanding dawning on her face. "They're sacrificing the ship to create a localized time loop. The entity can't consume what exists in multiple time states simultaneously." The Prometheus began to glow with an inner light that built rapidly to blinding intensity. In the last moment before it detonated, it transmitted a single message: for Earth and Alliance. The explosion was unlike anything Zorax had ever witnessed, a sphere of pure white energy that expanded outward, engulfing the darkness. Where they met, both seemed to cancel each other out, leaving empty, stable space behind. When the light faded, both the Prometheus and the void entity were gone. "Sensor report," ordered Admiral Okonkwo, his voice tight. "No trace of the void entity detected," replied the Solarian officer. "No debris from the Prometheus either. It's as if that entire section of space was reset." Dr. Miyamoto studied her readings with a puzzled expression. The temporal cascade created a quantum isolation effect. It didn't destroy the entity. It trapped it in a bubble of recursive time. It's still there, but locked in an endless loop of its own destruction. "And the crew?" asked Zorax. Admiral Okonkwo's face was grim. Captain Rice and her crew knew what Protocol Omega meant. They gave their lives to save this station and everyone on it. A respectful silence fell over the command center, broken only by the soft beeping of instruments. Human and alien alike bowed their heads in recognition of the sacrifice. "They bought us precious time," said Talus finally. "But this was merely the first wave. The Harbingers now know we possess the means to resist them. They will send stronger forces. Then we'll be ready," said Admiral Okonkwo. He turned to address the combined human and Alliance personnel. "What we witnessed today was just the beginning of a long struggle, but it also showed us what we can accomplish together. The Prometheus crew, humans all, didn't die just for Earth. They died for all sentient life in this galaxy." He paused, looking at each alien face in turn. "From this day forward, there is no more hidden humanity and separate alliance. There is only one united front against the void. We will build more arrays. We will develop better defenses. And we will stand together against whatever comes next." Zorax found himself nodding in agreement, a new respect for humanity growing within him. These beings who had watched from the shadows for millennia had just demonstrated their willingness to die not only for their own kind, but for species they barely knew. Perhaps this was why the architects had chosen them first, not just for their intelligence or adaptability, but for their capacity for sacrifice in service of a greater good. As the command center returned to activity, planning the next phase of their defense, Zorax approached Commander Chen, who stood silently before a memorial display showing the faces of the Prometheus crew. "Your people kept secrets for thousands of years," he said quietly. "But today, they revealed something far more important than advanced technology or ancient knowledge." "What's that?" asked Chen. "That at your core, beyond all your advancements and hidden power, you remain willing to give everything to protect others. That is a trait worthy of the galaxy's oldest guardians." Chen's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "We were never perfect guardians, Captain. Just the ones who happened to be first. Now we need to be partners instead, and learn from those we once only watched from afar." Together, they turned to face the view screen, where the stars shone against the blackness of space, a blackness they now knew concealed both ancient wonders and terrible threats. The age of isolation was over. The age of unity had begun.